Hey everyone, welcome back to the It's a Mind Game podcast. My name is Jade, and today I'm so excited to have my beautiful friend and partner in crime back, Claudia. You have heard her on multiple podcasts already, and as you might know, we do a collaborative program together for HA recovery. So if you're listening to this episode and you resonate with some things you talk about, that might be something you're interested in investigating in the future. But for now, welcome, Claudia.
Hello, Jade. I'm so happy to be back. And by the way, hashtag HA Dream Team.
Yes. When I said partner in crime, I'm like, that really doesn't fit us much at all because we are more like the dream team, aren't we? It's like we're creating a nice foundation for these women to get their period back and have confidence in the process and, I don't know, sort of help them iron out the bumps in the road because there's a few bumps.
Yes. And I love when I speak to women that they don't know much about us and they ask me about the program. And I go through all the things that we help women with, and everyone always gets shocked. And they're like, what? You do that? And that? And you also do that? How is that even possible? And it is true. We're a dream team and we love our job as well. So that's always a bonus.
Yeah. Well, what do they say? If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Is that the...
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
I
they
didn't think
say.
it was going to come out as smoothly as that, and then all of a sudden it
It
did.
actually did.
No, but I feel like every time I talk to you and I talk to the ladies, it's just it's there's joy. There's so much joy,
So much joy.
despite the ups and the downs. So, but today we decided we've got a bit of an agenda for our chat today that we thought, I guess it keeps presenting itself within the HA community, and then I guess the little DMs that we get from time to time from, I'm just going to say our followers collectively, because you've got quite a flourishing Instagram page, and then I get a few DMs more from podcast listeners. But there is this sort of theme of, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Am I sidestepping? And I guess it all stems from the idea that we do encourage women to pick the lowest hanging fruit. It's like you don't need to be making these massive leaps of progress. Just do things that you're comfortable to do and keep tracking forward. So it could be like 10 minutes off your workout. It could be add in an extra snack, somewhat cautious. But then there gets to a point where maybe we need to be a little bit more, not necessarily aggressive, but we need to give ourselves a bit more of a nudge because we've sort of been tiptoeing around the easier edges of HA recovery. And we feel like we're at our wits' end. We need to do more, but we're kind of stuck. And where do we go from there?
So normally when women come to us, they've been stuck in the familiar zone, which is also known as the comfort zone, for a very long time. And outside the comfort zone, everyone thinks that there is the happy, the growth zone. But in the reality, there is lots of fear. And if you manage to overcome the fear and to challenge the fear, then you can grow and you can really recover from hypothalamic amenorrhea and eating disorders. What I've seen quite recently, and also with some of the women in our program, is that they challenge the fears in the very beginning for the first months, for example, and then they stay there and they make the new routine the new comfort zone, right? So whenever someone asks us, am I doing enough? They already have an answer. The answer is already somewhere inside of them. And it's our job to help them to come up with the right answer. Am I making sense, Jade?
Yeah, no, I actually really like how you explained it because I guess that's the sticky spot in HA recovery. And a lot of women, they feel like it, when they first start the journey, it's, I'm doing it, I can do this HA recovery thing by myself, I don't need any support. And I think a lot of that, like, excitement and I'm going to say courage comes from the fact that they are smaller steps that are still empowering. They're still incredibly helpful. They are still contributing to your HA recovery and they should absolutely be celebrated. But it's when we sort of reach the end of those steps that we're willing to give a go and we start getting to the point of, okay, maybe I need to go from training 6 days a week to 4. And that feels big. It's like, I can't fathom that thought. I really don't want to. We've got all this resistance. But then there's the tie-in of, I can't keep doing what I'm currently doing because, as you sort of said, subconsciously, I feel like I need to do more, but I don't like what more is. And as you sort of articulate, that's where a lot of women start to reach out to us, because they're at that spot. They've done really well. They've been doing really well. They're challenging food fears. They're challenging their daily routines, but they're at that spot where I've reached what I can do by myself, and I don't think I can keep nudging forward. I need someone to guide me through and be sort of that comforting nudge. I'm actually just thinking of one of our HA community members that popped up with her period yesterday after 10 years of HA. And wonderful story, which is going to be on the podcast really soon, which I can't wait to share with you guys. But some of her finishing touches were, she was still training 3-4 days a week, and she felt like all the other areas of her life were going really well. Eating well, resting somewhat well. And the last conversation I had with her was a few more like sleep hygiene techniques about making sure you got sort of a fuller tummy before going to bed, and having a notepad beside your bed to get your thoughts out on paper before falling to sleep. And we also had some relaxation music. So if she does wake up, you're sort of setting the goal of, you're not giving yourself the option to get out of bed, because that's the routine. It's like, as soon as my eyes open, I have to make the most of my time. And instead we set the rule of, no, from now on, I'm just going to lie in bed, listen to rain falling, and try and listen to every single droplet until I fall back to sleep. And that might not have been something she come to by herself, because it was such a sort of random, odd thing to sprinkle in. And she also changed her training. She went back to yoga and Pilates for a couple of days, and boom, 2 months later, she has her period back. But I really love that story, because sometimes if you're feeling stuck in your HA recovery, like you've exhausted all options, that external influence or overlook can really help you identify just those last intricate things that we can tidy up, and they're not necessarily scary.
Yeah. And also with this specific client, something else has happened just a few days before she got her period back. She jumped on a call with me and we talked for approximately 45 minutes because she was exhausted. She couldn't do it any longer. And she was holding onto so much resentment, tiredness, recovery fatigue. And we have come up with a few things to focus on instead of going back and doing the same things over and over again. And finally, she got her period back. And I really truly believe that when you have a person that you can trust with your emotions, when you have one person that can really hear your feelings because she really understands what you're going through, that's by itself can really help you to restore your cycle, simply because it allows you to switch from a very sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight, to a rest and digest mode. And only when your parasympathetic system is switched on, then you can have a cycle. Because let's always remember that getting the period back is not only about the nourishment and the training, but it's also about the amount of stress that it's memorized in our body, right? And that can come from trauma, from years of not sleeping properly, grief, and so many other things. And I've noticed that women, when they come to us, there are 3 different reasons. The first one, they cannot do it on their own. They have no idea where to start. They absolutely have no idea. They just don't want to figure it out on their own. The second option is they have tried, and then they have realized that it sucks and they need the extra support. And the third types of women are the one that wants to follow proven steps. So they simply want to shortcut the journey. And I also want to be really open here. And there are women that at the beginning of the year, they told me, I want to get my period back in 2022. And then I send them an email or I send them a message after 4 months and I ask, so did you get your period back? And their response is, no, but I've changed my exercise routine. No, but I'm eating the extra snack at nighttime. And I think, well, yeah, that's very good, fantastic that you have taken the extra step towards recovery, but 1/3 of the year is gone. And you told me at the beginning of the year that not only you wanted to get your period back by the end of it, but you're also thinking about having children in 2022. And I think that sometimes being the cheerleader is not fair towards them, because why should I congratulate someone for adding the extra snack in 4 months? So just being complacent, I just do them a disservice, right? And sometimes you're right, what you said in the very beginning, like sometimes women need the extra nudge. They need an external opinion of someone that not only has been there, but has been working with hundreds of women before. Because otherwise, you close your eyes, you open them again, 2 years have gone past, and you're still square one.
Yeah. And it's so easy to, I guess, accommodate to the story that you want to tell yourself as well. Just in that, because it happens time and time again, and there's no judgment to all these women in any way, shape, or form. It's more to bring to the surface that this can happen, so that if you are one of these women, that then you know that you can probably nudge a little bit more. And that is sometimes we have so much resistance towards all these potential changes, and we think about it for so long, and then we finally make one change, and because it feels like such a maximum effort to do that, it almost gives us a false job's done kind of feeling. Like, well, I said I was going to eat, and I did eat more. Like, I'm doing it every day. And again, it is still wonderful, but there's so many moving parts to HA recovery, whether it be sleep, nutrition, exercise, calming the sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, whether it be working out your direction when it comes to relationships or friends or family, or there's so many moving parts to it. And I feel like sometimes the resistance to explore other options can come from two things, which is taking one step on that felt so extravagant that it kind of gives that false, I've done everything I can, rather than go, oh, wonderful, I've achieved that. This now feels comfortable. What's next? Or it's the idea of, I know these other things that need to be worked with, but I'm just, it feels too hard. So I'm going to pretend they're not there, and I'm going to do all these other things. And sometimes that can be hidden in other modalities. And you've done this before, I've done this before, we've all done it, where we go, maybe if we go see the specialist 5 times, those 5 visits might just change something. Like my blood work might magically change just from seeing the specialist, but I'm not going to do anything, because it feels good. It's like, but I'm doing a step, right? I'm doing the step. I've seen the person. But we really need protocols in between those sorts of appointments to be like, well, how can I prove to myself there is going to be a better experience with this next appointment? What do I need to do? What's my best foot forward? Like, I literally got, I'm going to hold it up in case anyone's watching YouTube. I literally got surrender tattooed on my wrist. And as you know, it's such an important part of my HA recovery journey. And that was because it was literally learning to put my best foot forward every single day and surrendering to the outcome, because we don't know when our period's going to come back. We can't predict it. And that's some of the fear. It's like, well, I don't want to make all these changes and then nothing works. But that's kind of the beauty of the beast, isn't it? It's like, as soon as you trust doing all these changes and surrender to the fact you don't have a timeline, that's when the magic happens.
And it's not only about getting the period back, let's be honest here, because as soon as you get your period back, the next day or the next minute, you're going to worry about the second period, and then the third period, and then when I'm going to get pregnant. So I always underline the fact that it's really important to have coping mechanism to deal with the stress. And also it's paramount to change our mindset and to protect our mental health. I got on a beautiful phone call on Monday last week with a woman that I think that she is such the right fit for the HA community. And she's really afraid of giving up training. She's so afraid of changing her identity that she keeps booking herself in for blood tests, because she's tracking her improvement weekly because she's afraid of committing to getting the support that she needs. Because, as I said just a second ago, she's afraid of let go of the identity. So if you're listening to this podcast, always ask yourself, what do you want to get out of this experience? Do you want to be that woman that every single week change something in her diet, in her training, look the blood test results, panic over them, have a cry whenever she thinks about all the things, all the emotions that she's experiencing? Or do you want to be someone that really reach her dreams, become free around food and exercise, and allow other people to support her to become the best version of the woman that you have always wanted to be, really? And I think that we should stop talking about HA recovery, because the reality is that it's so much more than hypothalamic amenorrhea. It's all about going back to the root cause. Why did you develop hypothalamic amenorrhea in the first place? And fantastic that you managed to get your period back, but what about the next time? What about the next time that you get stressed? The next time that you break up with your spouse, boyfriend, partner? What happens the next time that someone passes away? How are you going to deal with your feelings and with your emotions? How often do you want to go through this roller coaster? Yeah.
No, but I think that's so important, and especially to link in with the exercise, because I feel like it's so easy for people to misinterpret that the all in is demonizing exercise. And I personally don't believe that to be true. I do believe that a big reason for removing exercise, one, we know we're eliminating a stressor straight away. So if you want to fast track your HA recovery, it helps. It absolutely helps. If you want to delay it by keeping training in and experimenting with, I'll take a day down, I'll reduce intensity, you've got every right to do that. And lots of women do recover their period while still training, but it's definitely not the rule. But I think the more power that comes from this idea of going all in and stepping away from training actually has nothing to do with the training at all. And I'm talking about that more from what you were saying about the stress response mentally, which is, if you are trying to rebuild this and evolve this version of yourself that copes with stress better, that can form an identity that you as an individual are happy with, not everybody around you is happy with. Stepping away from training isn't just to reduce a physical stress, it's literally teaching yourself, well, if my only method of validation, stress reduction, letting my hair down, whatever you want to call it, comes from this one process, how are you ever going to function optimally if the exercise always has the power? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, stepping away from training and learning how to cope with life without it is where the knowledge and the lessons really sit. It's not the fact that you're broken and your body's not made to train or exert energy. It's not like that at all. But sometimes knowing that you can cope with life through other methods is a big part of where the HA recovery lies, because there could be a day where you can't train for a multitude of reasons. It's got nothing to do with your period. And then how are you going to cope with everything that's going on around you? But yeah, I just feel like sometimes women get the impression that we're only suggesting to take a step back from training purely because of, energy expenditure side of things. And it does play a huge part, 100%. But mentally, it's getting clarity. And a lot of women do realize, like, wow, I do feel really different when I don't train. So how do I feel good if there's a day that I can't train?
Absolutely. And also, if we look back at our HA recovery journey, I didn't stop training. I changed the way that I train, but I didn't stop. And same thing for you, if I recall correctly. You didn't stop.
I giggled in my head as you said that, because I say I went all in, and I get a few DMs about it because they're like, how did you cope with all in? But here's where my language trips me up, because in my world, training is strength training, cardio, like real energy expenditure, taxing sort of workouts. But my version of all in, I was still walking for an hour and doing an hour of yoga every day. I might have missed one or two sometimes, but it didn't bother me that I did. But for the most part, I was still moving a good part of the day, but it was low intensity. But it's interesting, the language shift, because as you just said that, you changed your training. I was like, oh goodness. Yeah, I was the same. 11 months I spent still strength training, reduced times, reduced days. But my all in, I was still moving because I love movement. It's a part of me. I feel good.
Yeah.
But it was a different expectation. And you know what? I felt great. When I got my period back in the form of moving I was doing, I never thought I could enjoy it, ever. What a useless waste of time. Didn't even break out a sweat. My muscles don't hurt. This sucks. And no, you know what? The reality is, by the time I got to it, it is exactly what I needed mentally, physically, everything. It was a great month.
Mm. And funny that you said that about the all in, because sometimes I say that I went all in, meaning that I gave my 100%. That didn't mean
Yes.
sitting in the couch eating donuts. It simply meant that mentally I was ready to give my 100%, to the point that when I got my period back, it really didn't matter. I had stopped checking my undies before every single time that I went to the toilet. I was feeling so energized and so okay with my life. I was able to go out. I was able to be social, to be spontaneous. I didn't care if there was cake or a salad. I didn't feel that I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go for a run. My muscles were fine. I was not in as much pain as I was before. So when the period came, it was really the cherry on top.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have all this heaviness around it because my life had already improved tremendously. Um, and we have also one woman in the HA community that's exactly how she described her process. She got her period back last week, but for the past month and a half, she kept on saying, I'm fine. If it
Yeah.
comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. Yeah, obviously she wanted it because her idea is also to
But
get
she found
pregnant in the
peace.
future. Yeah,
Surrender
she
to the
found peace.
outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was the embodiment of what we actually teach in the share recovery program. And every single time that she jumped on the group call, she was also so supportive and so light towards the other women. You could really tell that her life experience had changed tremendously. And I invite women not to forget that, because sometimes we always push the way that we feel and the way that we live our life to the side because we need to get our period back. So I have to do this only for a short amount of time. It's only for a chapter of my life until I get my period back. The reality is that there is so much more to that. And what's going to happen when you get your period back as well?
I was going to say, and then it's not that far from the behaviors and thoughts that sort of made you lose your period. It's that idea that I must have structure.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where it is intricate. The details are intricate and they're specific to the individual person. And that's what makes the whole process beautiful, because it is so unique to the person. And that is, okay, there's definitely steps to include in your daily life that will help reduce stress, that will help you be in the moment, that will help you to actually enjoy time with friends and food and have that fun, spontaneous lifestyle. But there is that element of, okay, we need a little bit of structure to learn this new rhythm of life, because otherwise we won't really know what to do. We do need some level of direction. We need to be waking up within 30 minutes to an hour of we need to be eating within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. We need to be eating every couple of hours, rethinking how we exercise. There's quite a few things that are actually staples that are our really nice foundations. But once we've sort of found our rhythm with that, is when it's time to almost let the wheels go and just live, right?
Yeah.
Because we've got the tools. And rather than sit there and analyze every single thing of what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? Because it's a stress. And it's so easy to get stuck in what am I doing wrong? Because I just want my period back. I just want my period back. But as you said, the real magic happens, especially for women that have learned to let go in this process and really just be themselves, is you see a glow a week or two before the period comes. And the woman you're talking about just recently, I think I mentioned it in our group call. I said, I knew you were going to get your period back because you posted a photo. You were at lunch. There was food everywhere. You were smiling. You were sipping a milkshake. And I said, I just saw so much joy. It wasn't about the food that was on the table. It wasn't about your outfit. It wasn't about any of that. You just looked so happy to be exactly where you were. You know, because in photos you can sometimes see when people feel tense or they're thinking, and you didn't. You just looked at this beautiful woman and she was just happy. She was so happy. And then I shared that with her and she goes, oh, I'm pretty sure actually that's the day I ovulated. And then 2 days or two days, if only 2 weeks later, you know, the bleed happened. And I definitely want to hear your experience, Claudia, but I know a week before I got my period, I definitely had the damsel in distress saga when it was Christmas Day. We had a pregnancy announcement and I had the pity party if I can't even get my period back. But get rid of that day. That wasn't that great. Oh, no, hour. It was a messy hour. Other than that, the week before I got my period back, I remember it was Christmas break. And I was just saying to my husband, I just feel so good. Like, I just feel good. Like, I didn't have sore breasts or cramping or anything like that. I just felt really happy with the person that I was, the life I was living, and it felt easy. And as you said, the cherry on top, it was like then my period showed up. And don't get me wrong, I danced, I jumped for joy. It was absolutely incredible. But I didn't have that, oh, finally. It wasn't that. It wasn't like, oh, I've done the grind, like it's finally here. It wasn't. It was this really angelic, feminine, just like, oh, wow. That there wasn't an expectation attached. I don't know if I'm making sense, Claudia. Tell me,
Yeah,
am I making
100%.
sense or am I just jabbering?
No, not at all. And actually, it's very interesting, something that you shared, because I received so many DMs and so many emails asking me, am I going to get my period back? Because these are the symptoms that I've been experiencing over the past 2 weeks. And some of them, you've just mentioned them, the sore breast,
Yeah.
and all
Pimples.
that. And I'm like, how would I know? Why would I know if your period is going to come back, especially if I don't know your story? Every single woman is very different. I've never experienced sore breast. And also, it really depends because we change with age. So maybe if you used to experience sore breath, even anxiety or minor depression before your period when you are a teenager, and that's possibly one of the reasons because you started taking the pill in the first place, if that's your current situation. Well, maybe if you get off the pill at the age of 30, your situation is going to be completely different. And also the length of your cycle is going to be different. The flow is going to be different. So stop asking others for reassurance, right? Because you already know if you're getting there, you kind of know. And going back to the clients that we were talking about before, her process was so much easier because she trusted someone else with it. When we met her in the very beginning, she was restricting the calories. She was intermittent fasting. Yeah.
She was pretty intense.
She was so tired. And then she decided to trust someone. It took her like a good 30 days.
It was a bit of a warm up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she just
I'm
went like, oh,
ladies.
I've done this and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And you and I sat there in that group call being like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's going all in. It's not that she sat in the couch, stopped working and eating the food and all of that. She was ready to give 100%. In the beginning, she wasn't. And then she said, what's the worst case scenario? And she started thinking, what's the worst case scenario? Because she did the mindset work with us for a full month.
Yeah.
Right. And for the women listening, it doesn't happen overnight. So don't beat yourself up if you're not
it's
there.
It's a process. Yeah. It's absolutely a process. Yeah.
And if it wasn't a process, we would not be here recording this podcast, offering the program, offering a space in the HA community. I wouldn't have a Facebook group with 751 women today, right? So always remember that it's a process. It can be hard. It can be overwhelming, which is why it's so much easier when it's done with a community of women supporting you. and also the support of two experts that have been there and have helped so many other women in the past few years.
And especially that overwhelm of, let's say that there's 10 things that you know you could improve on, and then you don't try one because it's like, but there's 10.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just having that conversation and going, oh, well, I know I could do this, and someone virtually holds your hand and goes, let's just do this one, or let's just do this two. The others will come. But at least then there's a forward step versus just sitting there spinning, being like, there's 10 things to do. There's no way I can do all 10.
Much.
It is too much. And I often say to the ladies, it's a delicate dance. It's a beautiful, delicate dance of what's the next step, but we don't want to spin and fall on our face. But we're still moving. We're still dancing. We're going with the rhythm. We're learning what works for us. And, the beautiful story about this woman that we've been referring to a few times, she's going to come on the podcast too, which is really cool. But she removed all exercise. And then I think a month before she got her period back, she added in some more Pilates. And for her, that was a really empowering decision because she decided I'm now at a loss by not doing some form of movement. Like I really miss just something. And she added it back in, but her mindset around it wasn't I need to burn calories. I need to prove I move. It wasn't. It was just I want to do something to make my body feel nice, but still honor my recovery. Her language was so beautiful and sincere. And if she didn't do a day, it didn't matter because she just didn't feel like it. And that was a really beautiful transformation just to watch as well. Her taking the responsibility and going, I guess, linking to what you were saying about the symptoms. It's like, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone else other than you. If you know in your core, this is what you need for all of the right reasons, and just like, if there's symptoms kicking in of your hormones coming up, trust that intuition, trust that instinct. Because for the most part, you're either relying too heavily on symptoms because you don't want to face other things. So it's like, well, I don't need to make that change because I saw cervical mucus and I saw my breast got a bit sore, so I don't need to change anymore. And it's a bit of a cover-up. It's a sneaky cover-up. Or you feel still really uneasy about the process, which is why you're clutching onto symptoms. Because rather than going, no, I'm putting my best foot forward every day. And I know that I am, and I'm trusting the process, because those sort of thought processes don't have set markers. It's just that rhythm kicks back in again.
Yeah. And also there is something that I would like to underline. Normally, when it comes to disorder habits around food and training and hypothalamic amenorrhea, there is something which is called secondary gain. So if I don't get my period back, then I don't have to deal with the fear of not being able to get pregnant and become a mother. If I don't change my training routine, if I don't change my food intake, then I won't have to deal with the fear of gaining weight and responding to comments. So always be aware of the secondary gains that are possibly keeping you stuck where you are in the recovery journey. It's very hard to understand which one they are, which is why normally it's much better to talk it out with someone that really understands you, so then you can move forward and you can remove these, let's call them obstacles.
Ongoing check-ins too, because I definitely know that, because sometimes it doesn't present itself in a first conversation, or even like your journal prompts. If you're not working with someone and you're journaling, things don't always present themselves first up. Sometimes you got to keep going and going and going until, oh, there's that one, or there's this one, or here's that. And that's where, we always refer to it as a journey, because it is just that. And it's so important what you just brought up then, because it definitely is out of sight, out of mind, unless someone brings up the point that, are you using your HA recovery as a distraction from fear or the idea of failure or all these sorts of things? Sometimes when that idea is presented to them, and it could be happening to someone right now, and they go, oh dear, have I been doing that? And it turns out they have, but they just never knew, because they were too busy thinking about the actual period itself rather than the outcomes and what the distractions are, what the goals are, and, all those details. So thank you for bringing that up, because I'm pretty sure at least one person would have listened to that and gone, oh, is my period, blaming my lack of period, saving me from the fear of pregnancy, weight gain, all the other things.
Yeah, and also thinking, as long as I'm the skinniest in the room, then I am the best at something.
Yeah,
That's a very recurring thought.
You know what, I feel like we're going to do another podcast on that topic, because I feel like that's huge. Yep. And we've got a couple of questions that some of the ladies have submitted for the end of this podcast, so we might jump into those. And then, because I don't want to condense that topic, because I think it's really important that, you know, there is a part of us that does get validation from our size, thinking that that's our best offering to the world. Yes. Or that's the only thing we can feel good about, or that we are good at. And yes, there's a whole world of it, and I would love to explore it with you, because I feel we've both experienced it and we've heard it. Well, have you experienced it firsthand? I'm assuming.
Yeah, 100%. And I've done most of my research and study on it.
Yeah, like I felt so vulnerable in social environments that I just held on to that one thing, that at least I was the fit girl in the room.
Oh, I remember screaming.
It actually meant nothing, but I was just so scared to be near other people. Like socially, I get so awkward. It probably doesn't sound like it from podcasts, but I do. I get very nervous. I get very awkward. I get very shy. I panic a lot. It's an ongoing focus. But if I just had, but you're the fit girl, like it's okay. People like the fit person. It gave me comfort.
Yeah.
No, tell me about your room scan.
I remember checking pictures, like after an event, after like a night out with friends, checking the pictures and making sure that I was still the skinniest one. Or entering a room and looking at all the other women and thinking, okay, I am the skinniest, so I have something to offer to the situation. But as you said, it's a very big topic of conversation. There is lots of layers in this one.
There's so many layers, so many layers. But I'm just that little trinkle of both our experiences, because it has actually come up with 2 particular mindset coaching clients. And the main things that come up attached to that, them sharing that with me, is they feel like they are so crazy for thinking it, and how stupid am I, and all these sorts of things. So I just want to highlight that if you do think these things and feel the same way, it is so common. Like you are not silly. You do not need to be embarrassed about it. That's why you find people who get it, because it's not silly. You're not weird. And you're not a bad person for thinking it. Absolutely not. Like it's just all part of this reality that we're in that can absolutely be shifted. But before I chew Claudia's ear off and get too passionate about another topic, let's jump into our questions that we had listed. So I'm just going to whip up my phone so I can see them first up, so I don't mix them up. And the first one I'm definitely going to direct to you, Claudia, because this is right in your field of knowledge. And Kristen has asked, why does my temp spike right before / during my period, but not during ovulation?
Okay. So 2 things to say here. So there is, I think, this misconception that when you ovulate, you should see your temperature goes up. But the first part of the cycle is dominated by estrogen. The second part of the cycle is dominated by progesterone. The second part of the cycle starts after ovulation. So the rise in progesterone increases the temperature. So it's not the increase in LH that spikes the temperature. It's the increase in progesterone. And it's progesterone, it has its highest just before the period. Then if the period occurs, estrogen and progesterone, they disappear. If instead fertility occurs, then progesterone keeps on rising and the temperature keeps on spiking. So that's normally how people can tell if they're pregnant or not, because the menstruation doesn't happen and the temperature keeps on going up and up and up. If the spike in temperature is seen just before menstruation, it means that there is still some hormonal imbalance that needs to be addressed. But that's basically our biological functioning in a nutshell.
Okay, so no, that's a really good tip, because I'm still learning more about the tracking side of things. That's why I thought you're a much better person to answer this question, as mine's sort of willy-nilly learning stages. But because they sort of throw out the benchmarks, which is you want the spike around ovulation, and if you've ticked that, it's all good. But just as you said, sometimes seeing temperatures tracking in different ways doesn't mean anything's wrong, but it can be an indicator that we can be better.
If you only rely on temperature when tracking the ovulation, you may miss ovulation. So that's why normally also that's something that we teach in the program is if you really want to track your fertility, use the LH sticks, use the basal body temperature, track your cervical mucus, track the positioning of your inside of the cervix, and your symptoms. So don't only rely on the BBT, the basal body temperature, because otherwise you may miss the fertility window if your ultimate goal is to get pregnant. And as I said before, so progesterone is the one that increases the temperature. But if you see just a couple of days before the menstrual cycle, then we need to address that because it should happen before then.
Before. I might link your details into the wonderful lady who asked that question as well, if they want to chat to you some more about it. But I do like what you said about the ovulation and the temperatures, because I feel like online it's made out that it's very simple, that if you get the temperature then you're fertile and, you know, bada bing bada boom, you've got a baby. But between yourself, my acupuncturist, gynecologist that I've spoken to, midwives, multiple professionals in different fields, they have all said like the temperatures are a wonderful indicator and they are very helpful, but they're not the pinnacle of when ovulation is going to happen. And as you said, using the LH sticks are helpful because at least, you know, it's actively in your system. But just to not zero in as that temperature as being the pure element of when you're going to ovulate.
Now, also, let's remember that it's if you want to track your temperature, it has to be a very specific and consistent thing. So if you don't sleep enough the night before, if you drink alcohol, if you have sex in the middle of the night, if you wake up and pee, if you wake up half an hour later, half an hour before, things change. So you cannot rely only on the BBT. And maybe the person that asked you this question is not even tracking the temperature correctly. So that's possibly why she's seeing the temperature rising just before menstruation.
Yeah, that's something I've wanted to track for ages, Claudia, and I'll go to the next question in 2 seconds. But that's honestly one reason why I find myself so inconsistent, because especially as a new mum, you know, you're waking up to attend to baby, your sleeping pattern's not consistent, and it's just there's no way I can do this plan the way it needs to be done, because it's a lot more detailed than just take your temperature upon rising. It actually is even down to your wake time needs to be consistent.
Yeah. With mothers, I normally advise to track something different and not the temperature.
Yeah. Thank you for your insight on that one. And obviously your details are always going to be in the show notes if anyone wants to reach out and talk to you some more about that. Laura has asked, in what situations a person could still exercise in HA recovery? If you want to go first, and then I'll go after you.
No, please. I want to go after you. This is definitely your scope of practice.
Honestly, I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because
I'm so glad that you said that.
And it's so unique to the person. I think the bigger questions to ask is, how do you feel if you were to miss training for a week or 2 weeks? Because if you feel like you absolutely cannot do that, it's not necessarily just the training, it's the relationship you've got with the training that needs some work on. All right, we've worked with a lot of women, Claudia, so we've got a few firsthand examples, and I'm just going to more give examples to this question rather than answer it, because this is how unique it can be to the individual woman. So myself, I went half in and did strength training 4 days a week, no cardio, nothing, ate all the foods, 11 months, nothing, walking and Pilates for 4 weeks period. If I had have done it earlier, would I have gone it? I don't know. All I can tell you is that I went and took my training back an extra step, and my period come within 4 weeks. I know another female who has been on the podcast. I can share the link to that one. Professional bodybuilder for 5, 6, 7 years, long time. Went through a coach, reverse dieted, got the calories right up, strength trained 3-4 days a week. This coach had worked with women who had been bodybuilders recovering their periods. He was known for getting women's periods back while training. She did this with him for 12 months, and he turned around to her and said, look, it should have come back by now. Like, I don't feel comfortable continuing to see you because it's not working. She ended up going all in. She just walked and did yoga. And I think 6 months later, her period come. Another very close friend, was running 10Ks a week, strength training 4 or 5 days, and works night shifts, rosters all over the shop. She got her period back. I think it maybe took a year, but it come back. But you just don't know. You just don't know. So for me, it's more, what's your relationship with exercise and what can you do to restore your hormones, rather than what's the perfect HA recovery training program.
Yeah. And there is only one thing that I would like to add. I've been part of the program. I created the program quite a long time ago. You've been part of it for a very long time. You've seen hundreds of women in the past 12 months, I should say. I haven't given the same meal plan. It's not that I give a meal plan. I just
like the guidance
yeah, exactly.
is very different. Yeah.
I've never given the same advices to another woman. Like everything that I do is fully customized, because what works for Jade doesn't work for Claudia. And we have to underline that. Yeah. If we were all the same, then we wouldn't be here having this conversation. We're not made with a cookie cutter, full stop. We're beautiful beings and we are all completely different. It all goes back also to considering gender, of course, female in this situation, age, past training, current stress, current situation, eating disorder or not in the past, ages of training, how many years without a cycle. So there are so many other things, many variables.
Yeah, and it's an impossible question to answer with a single dot point. Absolutely impossible.
Like the other one.
But it's probably the most common question though.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the perfect training program?
The perfect training, and I have the symptoms, am I gonna get my period back? We don't know. Especially if we don't know you. Like if we know you, then
we can get a better judge. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's such an important part too. It's like we're talking to a broad audience that we don't know individuals. Well, we know some of you, but yes, it's the broadest answer. The best answer we can really give to a general listener is that off the cuff, you are unique. Yeah. And what works for one might not work for the other. And we see that time and time again. Half the reason for this podcast is for that exact thing. It's like we share different women's outcomes, not to say that you should do one particular protocol, but to see how diverse the process is. But the one thing that always happens at the end is women feel like they can be spontaneous. They have fun around food. They are in charge of their exercise. The exercise isn't in charge of them. That's the only consistency amongst all of the stories so far. Yeah. I believe you had one more question. Oh no, you go first.
No, I was going to say, and if someone is out there telling you that there is a plan that if you follow, you're going to get your period back, well, be really aware of it.
Be very cautious.
Yeah, we offer proven steps that if you do implement, you're going to be very likely to restore your hormonal balance, but there is no such a thing as a plan. Because everyone is very, very different and we have to take all the variables into consideration. Yes, my last question, because we're running out of time as well. I'm so sorry. I'm such a, that I'm chatterbox. We both are anyway.
No, I'm so glad to talk to you, but I know we've got time blocks and I've already taken up too much of your time.
The last question was about fasting for religious reasons. And my answer is there are a few things that can be done if you're very religious and if you don't want to take a step back in your recovery journey. But fasting is absolutely a no-no when recovering from an eating disorder and from hypothalamic amenorrhea. It's simply going to set you back. And as I said before, yes, there are things that can be done because if it depends on your values. And if religion goes first and everything else follows, then absolutely you can still implement a few things, make sure that you don't go backward. But in terms of helping with recovery, that's unfortunately a no.
So definitely not a religious expert, but I have worked with a few women in a few different religions. And this is not during my time with HA. This is back when I've been personal training and I've met wonderful women along the way. And I have been told that when it comes to religious protocol processes of fasting, that if there is medical circumstances in play, it can be exempt from that religious
100%.
path. So
Yeah.
it's the examples they gave me, and again, it wasn't HA related. One woman was diabetic, so it wasn't safe for her to not eat for prolonged periods, pregnancy, and there was one other condition, but it's really long and lengthy, I'm not sure. But they said that they didn't need to fast because they had medical things and there was that allowance. So if you are trying to recover your period and you are quite religious and you know these things are really important to you, I'd encourage you to speak to, I'm going to say priest because I'm Catholic, that's who is in our churches, but whatever religion you are, whoever you turn to for guidance that is your closest to your God or whatever it is you believe in, I would encourage you to have a chat with them because they will be able to talk to you on more that faith front rather than just a medical side, because medically fasting doesn't help. We know that, but it's a very personal situation to be in. So I'd also suggest speaking to others in your faith.
Yeah, and I had a client that she was doing Ramadan and then she got an exemption because she was suffering from an eating disorder, and that wasn't helping her health. So she decided not to do it. So options are available for you out there. And if you were, I'm just referring to the person that asked that question, but if you are just wondering if it could help the recovery journey, definitely fasting is a no-no when you're trying to restore your hormonal balance. And that's it.
Yeah. And anyone listening who's thinking about fasting as well, just have a look back at Dr. Stacey Sims' podcasts when it comes to training and being really efficient at it, whether you've got a period or not. Fasting is not our friend. So definitely come familiar with that because it's a really powerful conversation that we can all help spread the word on. But I'm going to wrap things up because otherwise, Claudia, I'll start talking to you and another hour will go by and oh my goodness, it just flies. But thank you so much for coming on. To all the ladies listening, I will pop Claudia's details in the show notes if you want to reach out and have a chat with her directly. As you know, we do have some wonderful programs going, and if you feel like you've resonated with us and what we've had to say today, we would love to speak with you and see if we are the perfect fit for your HA recovery journey. Once again, Claudia, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jade, for having me. Always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
We'll see you then. Thanks so much for listening in on today's episode. I hope you loved it. And as always, I appreciate you being here. It really supports the channel if you could share it with someone else who you think would enjoy it. Share it on social media, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, all the things, all the things. It would be much appreciated if you could do that if you feel it is the right thing for you. But for now, I hope you have a beautiful day or a beautiful night, and we will see you in the next one.